Hello, this is Reverend Evan Sackett. I'm making this video to voice support for the West Memphis Three. For those of you who do not know, back in, I believe it was 1993, there were these child murders in a place called West Memphis, Arkansas, where in this area known as Robin Hood Hills, the bodies of 3 young boys were found. I believe they were probably 9, 10, or 11 years old. Well, the boys had been mutilated, their sex organs had been mutilated, they'd been stabbed, they'd been asphyxiated, and shortly thereafter, 3 older boys were arrested, boys that were really not that much older than the boys that were killed, probably 16, 17, 18 years old. There was Damien Eccles, which he was considered the ringleader of the group, and another one named Jesse Miskelly. I regretfully cannot remember the name of the 3rd boy, but if anyone, there's a movie that I recommend to anyone who does not know about this case you need to watch. It's a HBO documentary special entitled Paradise Lost, The Child Murders of Robin Hood Hills. There's also a sequel, Paradise Lost 2, Revelations. And anyone who examines this trial sees that it is absolutely ludicrous what these boys were prosecuted under. And here's how the case goes. Jesse Miskelly, who has an IQ of maybe 72, by the way, all 3 of these boys were poverty-stricken, received minute educations, came from rather poor families. So Jesse Miskelly is supposedly an associate of Damien Eccles. How they ever came to, how the police ever came to find interest in him, I'm not sure because I haven't read the case file. But Jesse Miskelly was taken into, into custody, and he was questioned for an extensive period of time. The police kept on interrogating him, telling him that he knew something was going on, that he knew what happened, that he had something to do with it. And eventually Jesse came up with this concept that he was there and he saw Damien and the other boy attacking the 3 boys, and that one of the boys ran off, and Jesse Miskelly ran and caught one of the boys and brought him back. I mean, when you examine this so-called scenario, it in itself is ridiculous. I mean, how are 2 17 and 18-year-old boys able to subdue 3 10-year-old boys? I mean, it seems like an unlikely concept to me, the fact that this could even be remotely considered something that could have happened. But all that aside, there was no evidence. Jesse Miskelly's confession, which he later recanted, he was taken to trial separately from Damien Eccles and the other young man. Now, Jesse Miskelly was found guilty, and then Damien Eccles' trial and the trial of the other young man came up. And, I mean, they had no evidence. The only bit of physical evidence, the remote physical evidence they had, was a knife that was supposedly found in a pond behind the one young man's house. And there was absolutely no positive identification on that knife. There was no proof that that knife had even been used in the murders. Aside from that, it was all bullshit, completely circumstantial evidence at best. There was a young boy who supposedly heard Damien Eccles say, "Hey, I killed these 3 kids." Okay, let's say he did say that. There's no physical evidence to prove that he did. And people don't seem to understand. It's not about trying to prove someone's innocence. It's about proving someone's guilt. I mean, I had no idea that people could be taken to trial over such small pieces of evidence. There was absolutely no positive evidence that these 3 boys were guilty of this crime in any manner of the word. In any manner of the word guilty, were they guilty of this crime? I mean, there's no proof that they were. And when you examine the people that tried this case, I mean, the lawyers, the judge, the sheriff of the county, these are just old fucks that basically prosecuted these boys based on what music they listened to. If you notice, probably about 2/3 of the prosecution's case focused around what kind of music Damon Echols listened to, why he dyed his hair black, why he wrote Aleister Crowley on his journal. How does this remotely intertwine with the murders of these 3 boys? And it's been almost 20 years that these boys have been in prison. And numerous people, Johnny Depp, Marilyn Manson, numerous people have voiced their support for the West Memphis Three. And I cannot believe that they are still in prison, that they have not been retried. I mean, there's no evidence that they were guilty. And in my opinion, they should be released because there is no evidence, absolutely none. And any of you who are familiar with the Paradise Lost movies, you will certainly remember Mark Byers, who was the stepfather of one of the, I believe his name was Christopher Byers, one of the little boys that was murdered. And in the first and second movies of Paradise Lost, he completely voiced his solid opinion that the West Memphis Three were guilty and how much he hated them. And he was very eccentric and very unusual. But now, for those of you who do not know this, Mark Byers is actually a supporter of the West Memphis Three. He now believes that they are innocent. He no longer preaches hatred towards them. He supports the West Memphis Three. And, I mean, there is a massive network of support going for these boys, but there is no action being taken. Every day that goes by is another day that they've spent in prison. That, I mean, they're growing old. Their lives are going to expire, and no one is. I mean, there are so many people getting out and making support, but there's a wall they can't push past. It's going to take serious intervention for this case to ever get to where it needs to be. It's going to take intervention from the Supreme Court. It's going to take probably a word from the president to get this case in order. And basically, I just want to voice support for these boys. I mean, it was the trial. Just watch the movie. Watch Paradise Lost, the first one, and you will see just absolutely how ridiculous that whole trial was. There was no evidence that those boys were remotely connected with the murders, except for Jesse Miss Kelly's confession, which he recanted entirely. Which, I mean, it's completely, it's bullshit. Who knows who did kill those boys? But the point is, there is no proof, there was no evidence that Damien Echols or Jesse Miss Kelly or the other third young man were guilty. There is none. And, I mean, they were going to use Jesse Miss Kelly's confession and have Jesse Miss Kelly testify against Damien Echols and the other boy, but he wouldn't do it. And even without Jesse Miss Kelly's testimony against the 3 boys, I mean, they were still found guilty, whereas they shouldn't have been. It should have been thrown out. I mean, it's absolutely. I had no idea that the law could be so blind to justice. In my mind, I thought that, you know, it had to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt that you were guilty, not half-assed assumed beyond tons of doubt that you're guilty. And that's what was done to these boys. So, if you are anyone who is in an area of political power or someone who can really intervene in this case, I ask you to please examine the evidence and examine the case and take a look at it, because these boys are innocent and nothing is being done to get them out. Everyone knows they're innocent. They do not need to be in prison. This needs to end.